Hello, everybody. Today, I want to take some time to talk about the firing of Jeff Sessions. I know the midterms occurred. The Dems pulled off a big win, winning back the House of Representatives. But first, I want to talk about Trump tampering with the Mueller probe yet again in firing his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And this is a move that some of you may know touched off nationwide protests. So, yeah. So, Trump was angry at his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. The Attorney General, for those of you who don't know, is supposed to be the country's top law enforcement officer. And Trump was upset at what he perceived was a lack of protection by the Attorney General Sessions in terms of the probe by Robert Mueller. And he has the fundamental misunderstanding that the Attorney General is supposed to work for the people of the United States, not be some lapdog who works directly for the president's interests. It's supposed to be a position that works for the people's interests. And I think that the timing of this was not unsurprising. Democrats took the House. They're going to have the ability to issue subpoenas and bring people in for interviews. According to New York Magazine and Vanity Fair, Don Jr., his son, has been privately worried about being indicted on various charges very soon. So I think the combination of those things and also not having to think as much about political backlash after the election was already completed were sort of what led to this happening now. And so, sort of what this means is the recusal of Sessions in the first place happened because he was part of the Trump campaign. And by law, you're not supposed to be overseeing investigations into things that you could be a witness for. So him recusing himself put the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in charge of the Mueller probe. And Rosenstein has proved over and over again that he is not a lapdog. He wants what's in the best interests of the country. He wants the truth to come out about what did or did not happen between Trump and Russia and any other crimes that Trump may have committed. So what ended up happening was Sessions was fired and immediately replaced by a man by the last name of Whitaker. And the issue with Whitaker and the reason that this triggered the nationwide protests, which were originally only supposed to be protests triggered by the firing of either Rosenstein or Mueller himself, the reason it triggered these nationwide protests is that this acting attorney general, who is now in charge of Robert Mueller, at least until there is a full-time Senate confirmed attorney general, there's a couple problems. He's called the probe a witch hunt. He wrote an op-ed for CNN about how the probe could or should be shut down or narrowed significantly in scope, and he's made TV appearances saying things along the same lines. And so this is a real issue because, this is about the rule of law, and it's about, we already know that white collar crime was vastly under prosecuted. A good example was the people that got away with financial murder, during the crisis. And I think it was a big mistake not the financial crisis. It was a big mistake not to prosecute those people more and, have some of those people do some jail time. But this is about the rule of law and having the president versus having a king. We're supposed to have three co-equal branches of government, and the Senate and the House of Representatives, they haven't done anything at all under Republican control to make sure that the president is not above the law. And that's what these protests were all about. We're having pretty much a Trump henchman put in charge of the Mueller investigation. So yeah, as I mentioned, there was nationwide protests. There was between 900 and 1,000 of them all across the country, and I was able to join one outside of a local congressman's office who is a Trump supporter slash enabler. And some of the things I took away were how peaceful it was, and how actually laid back it was, which could be a good or bad thing, but I'll choose to focus for now on it being a good thing. We were all there with our signs, we were all there chanting, and it was funny, me and some of the fellow protesters were joking about how we're the violent left and the angry left, that the right wing media tries to paint us as, and we were all just laughing in an easygoing mood. It's not that we weren't serious about what we were doing, but we were so far from the violent left or an angry mob, and it was just a joke. When me and some of the fellow protesters brought that up, we just couldn't help but laugh. We were standing there with our signs. We were very peacefully assembled, and that's what America is supposed to be about. But then my next point, though, is that these protests were a good start, but they weren't nearly enough. Protests, they need to have certain aspects of them, to make a big impact, and I'll sort of talk about that right now. The same group that I was with plans on reconvening. You can actually see I took a short video of the protests. You can see that on my Twitter. But it's just not enough. Because people packed up and went home. They were there for a few hours and then they were gone. And it's a good start, but it's not enough because protests. The reason it wasn't enough is because protests have to be sustained. They have to go on for more than just a couple of hours. If you have people like Congress and the president who are just not listening to the people's will, the protests have to go on for more than a couple of hours. They might have to involve some discomfort. They might have to involve extra effort. And I'm not saying people should just stay out for weeks uninterrupted. I'm saying that people should come out every night or every other night for weeks if it takes, as long as it takes for the desired result to happen, which is this Whitaker guy to recuse himself, just like Jeff Sessions did, from anything that has to do with the Mueller investigation. Now, to take things a step further, if this guy comes in and he fires Mueller or he suppresses evidence or things like that, there should probably be sustained protest, or there should be a general strike. A majority of people should just stop showing up to work, flat out. I know that it happens all the time in other countries, and they work because you grind your country's economy to a halt, and the politicians suddenly they start to listen to you. So these are all like great ideas to have and everything, but the truth is, I'm not optimistic that that's what will happen. I tried to pass these ideas along with the crowd that I was with yesterday, but I don't think it will happen until or unless people started to have trouble putting roofs over their head or with food or fulfilling their basic needs. But I make the argument that we need to act preemptively before things get even more out of control, because what's happened is the slow breakdown of the rule of law. First it was this thing that happened, and then the next, and then the next, then it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's been going on sort of that downward slope this whole presidency. So I try to encourage people to act preemptively, but I'm not, in the near future, I'm not extremely optimistic that people will take those steps. So just to sort of conclude, Trump was very angry about the recusal of Jeff Sessions, who is supposed to be working for the people, not for Donald Trump. Trump fired him. This recusal that had put Rosenstein in charge, who had clearly been trying to protect the integrity of the investigation that led to, after Sessions was fired, Whitaker was appointed, and Whitaker has proven himself to be somebody that is very anti-Mueller and doesn't seem to be very interested in the truth. And this is about protecting the rule of law, as I said. I also said that nationwide protests were triggered. I had the good fortune to be able to join one outside of a local congressman's office. They were peaceful, which is great, but I'll reiterate, they were a good start, but just not enough. They have to be sustained. They have to go daily or several times a week. They have to be seen and covered by the media. They have to make an impression on the people that are making decisions, or it's just not enough. But it's a wonderful start. And then last case scenario would be a general strike for people to literally not show up to work in many industries. And that's something I'm not optimistic will happen. I think we have a different culture of protest here than in other parts of the world, where they are much more likely to go out on a limb and just do what they have to do to be heard. But it's not something that I think couldn't happen if things rapidly deteriorate. So I want to thank you all for listening to this video, watching this video. Please follow me on Twitter at JasonBPolitics. You can catch a quick 20-second video of the protest that I joined. And I will be talking, I believe in my next video, about the Democrats taking over the House and the midterm elections. Thank you.